and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And this past week, we marked the one-year anniversary of the Pulse massacre in Orlando, with remembrances all across the country for the victims and the survivors.
We also saw the taking place of the LGBT Equality marches that we were unsure how real they were, but they happened.
It was something new. Something new in DC Pride was a disruption by activists who were protesting corporate sponsorship and collaboration with the police.
Our president has nominated 2 more notorious anti-LGBT bigots to the federal bench.
On the other hand, Chelsea Manning is not only out, but she's speaking out.
And she has a brand new look. A Catholic cardinal welcomes LGBT Catholics to his Newark cathedral. How much progress is that?
Well, the cathedral's still standing. This is in Bushwick, Brooklyn. 2 trans women brutally attacked by a mob of bigots.
In Scotland, the Scottish Episcopal Church is opening marriage to same-sex couples, further splitting the Anglican Communion.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions made some other news this week. He wants the power from Congress to crack down on medical marijuana.
At the Tony Awards, closet case Kevin Spacey thinks it's okay to tell jokes about being closeted, as multiple out winners thank their same-sex spouses. We'll have, as you might imagine, something to say about that.
Yes, and we do think it's okay to call him a closet case, because that's what he is.
Yes. He basically called himself a closet case.
Which was
sort
pathetic.
Of. Yeah.
All right.
But let's
later.
get to more serious things.
Of course, there were massive memorials in Orlando this week over the Pulse massacre, paying tribute to the 49 people who were killed and the 68 people who were injured in that June 12th, 2016 attack, which we remind you was the deadliest mass shooting by a single shooter in United States history, or modern American history.
Here in New York, the remembrance was organized by Gays Against Guns, which a year ago, when it first happened, created an image of the 49 human beings, they call them, who represent the 49 killed. And they put people in all white outfits with veils over hats, and they're silent through whatever event they're at. And it's very moving always. And they each carried a placard that names one of the people who was killed and describes them. And so they processed, I hate that word, marched into, with dignity, into the remembrance event in Sheridan Square in front of the Stonewall Inn.
These took place all over the country, and there was also attention to the survivors of this attack, and how are they doing?
Yeah. And
we actually have a video of, who do we have here? We have Angel Colon, who was a survivor of the attack, and let's just see how he's doing. This is from HRC.
It's been almost a year now since June 12th, and about 2 weeks ago I had my 4th surgery, which is my last surgery. My name is Angel Colon, and I am a Pulse survivor. I sustained 6 gunshots. I also had a broken femur. It's been a very hard process. I have had to learn how to walk again. It's now day by day, and I'm taking steps forward. Not being able to be active anymore. It was hard, you know, the first few days. I was upset, very angry, but, you know, I couldn't not do anything about it. So I just decided, you know, I have to move forward. I need to just recover from this and do my best to just get back to where I was. I'm gonna jog twice a day again one day. I have to, I love eating, so. I've needed help with my mobility everywhere I am in my house. My family has been there since day one. My recovery would be completely different if I didn't have them by my side. They're me. They're the same person as me. They've always been there for me. Our bond has always been strong, but it's even stronger now. Feeling the love and support, not just from your city and your country, but from all over the world, it helped a lot. It's a big thank you and a big I love you as well. You know, that meant the world to us. Seeing the LGBT flag all over in places where I wouldn't think it would be. It just shows how much love there is out there. We'll be here every day, you know, representing the 49 beautiful souls. They were all beautiful people, and they were all loved, and we're gonna spread that love that they had as well. Being able to, you know, be here every day, it's like you have a second chance in life, and you know, I'm gonna make the best of it.
Sorry for mispronouncing your name, Angel. You do seem to be an angel. And the wonderful thing, of course, about this, and what really has changed, at least in the United States to a great extent, is the support of families. You know, we're coming up on the 44th anniversary of the upstairs lounge fire in a gay bar that killed...
In New Orleans.
That killed...
32 people.
Right.
32 gay men, basically. They never solved it, never found out who did it, although they suspected it was a gay man who was a little unbalanced and who had been kicked out of the bar earlier in the evening. He ended up committing suicide a year and a half later.
But my point is that there were family members in that case who didn't claim the bodies of the people who were burned alive.
And certainly the news coverage was not the same. One thing that has impressed me about the Pulse remembrance is how universally acknowledged it's been for good and bad. You know, Trump tweeted about it.
He has a hell of a nerve. I mean, he didn't mention anything about, of course, that these were gay people. He just wants to talk about it as a terrorist incident.
Exactly. So he said, we will never forget the victims who lost their lives 1 year ago today in the horrific Pulse nightclub shooting.
And there are news reports that don't even mention the fact that these victims were gay or even Latino. Latinx.
I actually saw one of those on CBS. The evening news. They do, we're going to remember Pulse. They do about 3 minutes of a tape piece and, you know, anchor intros and outros. Never once said the word gay or LGBT, never said Latino, Latinx, nothing. It was just the victims. Nothing to identify who they were or what this club was, no identification of the club. As a gay club, it was just shameful. Shameful. And I understand NBC did the same thing. And so you have this universal acknowledgement, but you had still the reluctance to
what do you think that's
deal
about?
directly. Discomfort. It's always discomfort. It's, you know, this is icky. We don't want to talk about this.
You don't think this is finally a chance for some of them to show some compassion for gay people, for God's sakes?
Andy, don't get me started
on the
seriously. Naivete of not understanding that the majority of the world is still uncomfortable with us and these subjects.
Look, in the wake of this, in the early reports when this happened, there was a mix, but it would finally settled on talking about who the victims of this attack were and the anti-gay hatred that was involved.
Among us. More widely, not so much.
Well.
The U.S. Senate passed a resolution of remembrance. That was a little...
It did have lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender in the opening paragraph. Of course, they wanted to get onto the whole terrorism aspect of it, but they did have that in the opening paragraph.
Well, that puts them ahead of CBS and NBC.
Okay.
By the way, the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Projects is out with its annual report of incidents that were reported to them for all of 2016, and they don't even cover the whole country. They say, not even including Pulse, which of course is included, but if you look at statistics over the years, murders are up, violent attacks are up. It's the atmosphere we're living in now, and the boldness of the attackers.
We've also pointed out...
You can see that report if you go to avp.org.
We've also reported to you over the years that one of the reasons that the statistics may be up is because people come forward and report what happens to them now. They have the support of their families in doing so.
Yes.
There's less shame around that.
Yes.
But I do have to think over the last year, given what's happened in the wake of Trump and that what's been unleashed in the country, there is more, anti-LGBT, racist, anti-Semitic, anti-woman violence.
Just violence. We're recording this on a day when the attack took place on the Republican Congress members in Virginia. It is an atmosphere of frustration, anger, violence that encompasses all sides,
Sure.
and is very disturbing and frightening.
Yes. Well,
anyway.
In the face of all this,
yes.
equality marches were held in 90 cities across the country.
Well, let's deal with some of the pride issues first.
Sure. Well, we mentioned that Trump's not celebrating Pride, and they can't even mention it in the Pulse tweet. But
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson put out a statement saying that the State Department would uphold the fundamental freedoms of LGBTI persons to live with dignity and freedom.
And many of the departments have LGBT caucuses, groups, and they're not stopping them from doing their Pride celebrations.
And so embassies, U.S. embassies around the world actually celebrated and acknowledged Pride. We have a couple of pictures. That's the embassy in Vienna, Austria, flying the Pride flag right below the American flag. Very elegant, very beautiful. And there in New Delhi, India, the entire building of the U.S. Embassy is turned into a Pride flag.
And that's a country that forbids sodomy.
Yes, we're still fighting that, but the U.S. Embassy is on our side. Yeah. Here back in the United States, in D.C., Washington, D.C., there was a controversy about Pride. The regular Pride March was taking place, and it was interrupted by protesters from No Justice, No Pride, that's their flag there.
So they're locking arms across the way to stop the march, and the march was diverted around them eventually.
They are upset at the overwhelmingly white board putting on Pride, the overwhelmingly large sponsorship by corporations, particularly corporations that they don't like Wells Fargo, which they think is exploitive of everybody, and Northrop Grumman, which is finally my opportunity to say I am no relation to Northrop Grumman.
We're all brothers and sisters, Ann.
You'd be amazed how many people think I'm related to Northrop Grumman. I am not. But Northrop Grumman is a sponsor, evidently, of DC Pride, and No Justice, No Pride doesn't like that. They also don't like the extent to which the police and law enforcement agencies are invited into the parade.
I mean, 20 years ago, I wrote a piece saying, can't we get back to the roots of Pride? And they do this in some parts of the world, where community groups put it on. It's just about that. We march up the street. That's what it's about. No corporate floats, all that stuff. But what I realized is that the only way that they can put on these big extravaganzas is with money, and that's the only way. That's the easy way to raise money, to take corporate money. Most of the LGBT big groups take corporate money.
But the point is, we don't want that kind of extravaganza.
Well,
we want a grassroots march down the street.
We want.
You and me.
So what I would say is, then we've got to organize such a march. But, in the old days, the Christopher Street Liberation Day Committee, which got it all started in 1970, it was just community groups that met. It was a pain in the neck. You met every week for the whole year to put on the one event. You fought with each other all year. You finally had your march. And we did that. People don't want to do that anymore. So it's fallen to people who say, okay, we don't have a lot of community support to do this all year, so we'll take Wells Fargo money or whatever the hell we're going to take. It's unfortunate. I wish we could get back to our roots, but and then I've covered the march. I've been going to every march, at least in New York, since 1974, and I look at the people on the sidelines. They enjoy the Mardi Gras aspect with the boys on the floats and all that other, and the women on the floats and all that stuff. They are loving it.
And the people in the parade are loving it. So
what I would partly say is, if you want a better parade, organize a better parade. I mean, yes, try to make this better and more sensitive.
It's a lot of why I don't go to Pride marches very often anymore. I may go this year because there's the whole resistance group at the head or almost head of the New York parade, and that's going to be protest groups who are resisting the Trump administration.
That's where I'll be.
Yeah, so that I think is a worthwhile thing, but to go for the party floats, not for me. So anyway, the No Pride, No Justice group in D.C. wants a more diverse and integrated board running the parade so that perhaps you could have some of each. More trans people on the board, more Native people on the board, just a more diverse group. Now, you'd think that would not be a hard sell, but in fact, it's a big fight in D.C., and there are a lot of people who were very, very upset about
Those were people people on the sidelines who didn't like getting disrupted and said offensive things. But the Capitol Pride issued a statement of conciliation, and they want to work on this.
Yes. Although the group had been trying to work with them before the march.
I'm not privy to how that went. But it really, again, it means having a lot of staying power. And given all that's happening, do you want to devote your year to this being the focus of your activism, planning a Pride March? Mm-hmm. The fact is, most people don't.
Well, there's a similar controversy in Toronto where the Black Lives Matter groups have objected to police marching in the Toronto parade. There's a real tension here between local people of color, activists who say, why are you inviting the cops into the parade? They're the ones who are mistreating us, and we don't feel comfortable seeing them in the parade. And the other side says, well, there are LGBT cops who are doing the right thing and friendly. We obviously don't know all the details of that, but in Toronto, they did tell the police, you can march, but not in uniform. So, meanwhile, the New York City Gay Officers Action League has now invited the Toronto police to march in uniform in the New York City parade. We'll see how that turns out.
We've been dealing with parade politics of one kind or another for the last 50 years.
And it's happening in Pittsburgh, where the organizers of the parade, see how you like this for pragmatism. The parade is now the EQT Equality March. What is EQT? A fracking company. They have bought the parade. Yes. Yes, they have.
I have my limits. Although I was listening to the executive director of a fairly grassroots social service organization that shall remain nameless, and I was at the Pulse
Do they
Memorial,
have to?
and I said, they were saying, isn't it great that DC Pride was disrupted? I said, would we take corporate money at this organization? And we should take the money and do good with it. I said, well, wait a minute.
Yeah. Couldn't we draw the line on that?
We draw the line on tobacco money and, certain
It's all
things.
very arbitrary. In Alameda, California, LGBT protesters rejected a pride proclamation from the mayor because when she was on the city council in 2009, she voted against an LGBT curriculum in the schools. See, we never forget. Watch out. We never forget.
We do want people to make progress.
Well, she's now issuing this proclamation. So, again, it is controversial. Do we forgive or do we not forget? But
I
that's
think if
going
people
on there.
say they were sorry, starts with true contrition. We'll get to the Catholics later.
Well, how about this? In Charlotte, North Carolina, the Pride organizers there rejected a contingent that identified themselves as pro-Trump deplorables.
I have thought about this.
Okay.
And I would say, if it is just like a gay Republican group or a gay Catholic group, which comes from an organization that's anti-gay, but they are themselves a pro-gay group. As long as they support the goals of the march, then I would say that they can be admitted. Now, Charlotte Pride says, we have the right to reject groups that
Well, they do. This is several Supreme Court cases, and the
they
boss,
do have the right.
Yes.
I'm saying that, as hard as it may sound, I would not reject. Let a gay Trump group march in the parade and find out how they're received. And you
perhaps march around them with educational signs. But this is the confusion that takes place, and I saw it again. I can't remember why. Did I write it down on the View this week? Where this business of free speech. Don't they have free speech? Free speech in the United States Constitution, First Amendment, refers to government censorship of speech, not to private organizations, corporations,
but if you work
whatever.
for a private corporation, you still have free speech rights. You can say whatever you want, and they can fire you for it.
Exactly.
But doesn't mean you can't say it.
The First Amendment free speech guarantee just says that the government cannot punish you for protected speech.
Harvard wanted to punish those kids who made those postings that they thought were private on Facebook, which were offensive. They have a right to do that as a private organization.
Absolutely. It is only the government that is forbidden to censor free speech.
And if you have a government job, you have a certain higher level of protection on your job for speaking out privately about various issues.
But you actually have less protection for political speech. Is it the Hatch Act that forbids you to speak politically as a government
It's not
employee?
Orrin Hatch, that's for sure.
No. And finally, in Philadelphia, activists there took the rainbow flag and added a couple of stripes to it, black and brown, in protest of an incident at a local gay bar where the bar owner reputedly threw out people of color and used racist language against them. And so activists in Philadelphia have made a new version of the flag to make it more inclusive explicitly, and that's very controversial.
Well, Gilbert Baker, who we will be honoring with a memorial tonight as we sit here on Wednesday, never patented the flag.
He couldn't.
He changed it several times over the years.
Including just before his death. He was adding a 9th stripe.
And he used it as a background for protest banners, so it was used in lots of different ways. And if people want to make another design with rainbow stripes, I mean, nobody can patent the rainbow.
Yeah.
If you want to make a rainbow with other stripes in it, you're entitled to.
And those who are objecting say the whole point of the rainbow is that it is fully inclusive. But as you say, Gilbert would certainly not have objected, and people can do whatever they want.
Gilbert just didn't want the flag flown at half-staff ever, even for him.
What you can't do is make your version and call it the official flag. There is.
I just came from the Museum of Modern Art, where Gilbert's flag, the only flag ever acquired by the Museum of Modern Art, was flying right in the main hall.
6 stripes or 8 stripes?
I didn't count. It's up high. But it was put there right after the election to make a little bit of a statement.
Yeah.
Like Julius Caesar.
His original version was 8, then it became 6, and then he expanded it to 9 just before his death, and now there are all these different versions. Anyway, so that's all of that.
We're going to talk about these equality marches.
Yes, we have been wondering ever since this idea was broached some time ago. Some guy in New York sitting at home came up with this idea of equality marches in D.C. and around the country. And we thought, really? Can one guy coming up with this idea really make anything happen?
Well, that's kind of how the Women's March got started, isn't it?
Well, they had 4 people.
All right.
No, it may have originally come from one person in Hawaii or something.
Whatever.
And we thought it was a good idea. We just didn't know whether anybody would bring it off. But eventually,
a jillion people showed up for it.
People got on board, the national organizations.
1 jillion around the world. So here we are for the equality marches. There's some of the one
That's
taking
in
place.
D.C. You can see the White House in the background.
That's separate from D.C. Pride.
Yes, that was the day after D.C. Pride.
In California, they had Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff marching.
Yeah.
I remember Nancy Pelosi at the 1987 LGBT March on Washington when she had just been elected.
Yeah, that's D.C. again. We have one more picture from D.C. that's kind of pretty. And, You will note, and there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an 8-stripe version of the flag. The flag is the symbol everywhere.
Yes.
All over the world. I keep being struck by this ever since Gilbert's death.
Yes.
You can Google Pakistan gay, and you will see a picture of the rainbow flag, or any other country or city in the world.
When they publish the Worldwide Pride Guide, you know,
there's always a rainbow.
No matter what page you turn to, it's the rainbow.
So the genius of Gilbert to have created this symbol a mere 39 years ago that has swept the world.
They had one in Chattanooga, and Mayor Andy Burke said, your activism has to be in places where you're not welcomed. When these issues come up, the galleries need to be filled, the halls need to be filled.
In LA, they turned the Pride Parade into a resistance equality march. 100,000 people showed up. They had these in Portland, in Boston, in Chicago, in Missoula, Montana, in San Jose, California, in
Indianapolis,
Davenport, Iowa, Charlotte, North Carolina, Albuquerque, Honolulu. That's just a small number.
In Washington, 2 guys, Lou and John Thompson.
Did we have the San Diego picture?
Yes.
Yeah, there's San Diego.
But in Washington, Lou and John Thompson, both 69, they came to Washington from Conway, Arkansas. Said it was their first, such march and their first political protest. And they held a sign that said, "We love our single gay son." And their son Brock's sign read, "I love my annoying but well-meaning straight parents." That's cute.
And just to show the worldwide impact, Guam had its first Pride March, and they're carrying a huge rainbow flag. It's just everywhere, and that woman has a flag on her T-shirt, too.
There it is.
All right.
But what was the president doing while all this was going on? He was attending the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority Conference, praising people like Ralph Reed and James Dobson, and these are just hardcore anti-gay bigots.
And hiring Jay Sekulow.
I hired him?
Hired Jay Sekulow for his independent legal team, working with Mark Kasowitz.
Now, are we going to be paying these bills?
I have no idea, but I certainly hope not. These are his private lawyers.
Well,
I don't know who's paying for him.
Well, let's talk.
Jay Sekulow is one of the monsters of the Christian right-wing movement for decades.
He's on Fox all the time. I do tune into Fox once in a while to see what they're saying. And, of course, he's on the 700 Club. But all of the nominees that Trump makes for the courts are going to be very conservative. But these two are beyond the pale. Damian Schiff has been nominated to the U.S. Federal Court of Claims. He's the one who says that he supports overruling the unconstitutional excesses of the New Deal and the Great Society. But
wow, what are we going back to?
He wants to go back to criminalizing sodomy, which just means reversing the 2003 decision so that the states could go back to that. And he wants, natural law.
Look, Lawrence v. Texas overturned Bowers v. Hardwick. There's no reason they can't overturn Lawrence.
And when Trump says the marriage thing is settled, it is settled until they change that.
Well, if they get Anthony Kennedy to resign this summer, boom.
That's true.
We're gone.
We are. And then there's John K. Bush, nominated to the Sixth Circuit. Where the hell is that? Anyway, he compared Roe v. Wade to the Dred Scott decision. And for a decade, this guy who's nominated to the Sixth Circuit, federal court, lifetime appointment, hid behind a secret online identity to do extreme rants and believes the term faggot is acceptable language to use in a public address. Now, if they can't stop these guys, Lambda has come out foursquare against them.
Well, what about the Senate? Are they coming out foursquare against him?
Well, I mean, are these people beyond embarrassment? I think so.
Yes. But, look, they sit there and defend Jeff Sessions.
Well.
who is, I've been calling him a Keebler elf,
Well,
but I think that's
it
too
is.
kind.
No, it's kind of what it reminds people of.
Yeah.
But he's a nasty piece of work.
All right.
More about him later in AIDS news.
Okay.
All right. In politics, you want to talk about more Trump stuff?
No, well, the only thing I would say about that is that on the good side, there is a group of former generals who have written a letter to the Secretary of Defense, Mattis, to urge him to get moving on putting together guidelines for service by trans people in the armed forces. You know, I have some hope that could happen because I don't think Trump cares so much about that.
Mattis was the only one in the cabinet meeting who didn't kiss Trump's ass.
And Trump turned away from him.
It was like watching King Lear. Let's make that L-E-E-R. All right, in politics, you know, this key election in Georgia's 6th congressional seat, which Tom Price's seat. He's the head of Health and Human Services now.
Yep.
It's a tie in the polls. The vote is June 20th. Asaf was not, the most liberal guy, but he did speak at a thing for LGBT people on Sunday and took place in the Atlanta Equality March.
Good.
But his opponent, Karen Handel, was a horror, although she's trying to soft pedal her past anti-gay, anti-choice advocacy, trying to soften those stances.
Don't buy it.
No, don't buy it.
And please get out and vote if you're in that district.
New mayor of San Antonio was elected, endorsed by HRC Ron Nierenberg, replacing a homophobic incumbent.
In Virginia, trans woman Danica Rome, I assume it's Rome, R-O-E-M, won a 4-way Democratic primary for the state legislature for the House of Delegates. She presumably would be the highest office-holding trans person.
Yes. Well, her opponent is Bob Marshall, who a self-described chief homophobe of the legislature.
That's what he calls himself. So that should be quite a race.
Yeah.
In New York State, our governor has to name a new judge for the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in the state. There are 7 candidates recommended by whatever screening panel there is, and 2 of them are LGBT. Well,
our neighbor Roz Richter and
Paul Feynman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've known them for years.
Both excellent judges. We hope one of them gets
they've been
nominated.
replacing an African-American woman who was the only African-American woman on the court.
Yes.
She committed suicide.
In New York City politics, a group of middle school students got themselves together and created a bill for the city council to pass to collect data on school GSAs, gay straight alliances.
Good, because I ask them all the time, how many do you have? And they say, we don't know.
Well, their first idea...
There are 1,100 schools in the city of New York, by the way.
1 million students.
1.1 million.
Oh, I stand corrected. So their first idea was to write a bill that would mandate that every school have a GSA, and they were told that they couldn't do that, although I'm sure they're wondering why. But they were talked down from that. So now what the bill would do is mandate collection of data on how many exist in what schools and what city money is being spent to support them.
When we were doing a lot of grassroots work around this, we pushed that there be an identified person as an LGBT resource among the teachers that everybody would know. It didn't have to be a gay person. That everybody would know about. And
it struck me as inadequate, but I suppose
it was something.
Start. Yes, exactly.
Oh, actually, they do something because they do wear these lanyards, apparently, that say I'm a safe person or something like that around this issue.
My fear is that if you have one person who's designated, then if you go to that person, then you are identified.
All right. But I mean, they have now many teachers are supposed to wear these things.
I'm in favor of many.
I hope.
And the other bit of political...
I haven't been to school lately.
I have.
Yes, you have.
In Colorado, in my last political story, out gay member of Congress Jared Polis is going to run for governor. His platform includes mandating that the state become 100% reliant on renewable energy in the next couple of decades, that preschool and kindergarten be made available free to all, and that companies make stock options available to their employees.
Jared is also the chief sponsor of the Federal Equality Act, isn't he?
Yep.
And he, Democrat from Colorado. This is to replace John Hickenlooper, who was a Democrat. It's a crowded field in both parties.
Yeah.
Jared has the advantage of being able to self-finance because he made an internet fortune. And we will see.
Yeah.
We will be tracking it closely.
Yeah.
We know he watches from time to time. How are you? Come on in. Come on the show. I know you don't need the money, but come on in.
In other, back to the students and educational news, in Lawrence, Kansas, KU, Kansas University of Kansas, I'm sure it's one of those. I think it's the University of Kansas, yes, is creating a dorm wing for LGBT questioning allies. They have already filled the wing with 20 people, and they have a waiting list. And they're just gonna, it's open to all.
They're still going to assign roommates, regardless of sex,
randomly.
gender identities, gender.
And news from a viewer who says that he is the first out trans man to be the head of a school in California. He's in California, Northern California, Lark Doolin. He says the kids love his honesty, his coming out. He's had no problem with that. And then shortly after he came out, in Brookline, Mass., another school administrator also came out as a trans man.
All right, let's give him some bad news. The Idaho Supreme Court has denied custody and visitation rights to a gay woman who raised the child with her former partner because this reflected state laws that haven't been updated since same-sex marriage became legal in 2014.
Well, the reason that she was denied was because they're not married.
But there have been some look-backs at these situations where they, at least acknowledge that you were a parent.
Yes,
not
absolutely.
in the strictest legal sense, and then they make accommodations. But
absolutely.
So this was a case that our side lost.
Yeah, and we have the ongoing story of the. Well, first let's get to this. Chelsea Manning, this is a better story, is now out of Fort Leavenworth.
And on Nightline.
And GMA did a little interview. And this is the new Chelsea Manning. She is quite glamorous.
Chelsea wrote a book while in prison, and a 300-page book that should be coming out soon. Maybe we can have you in, Chelsea, if you're in town.
Delightful. She's only 29 years old, served 7 years, the longest sentence ever served by someone accused of leaking government documents. And there's a rumor that she will get a Vogue spread.
How about that?
How about it?
All right.
Then we have news of several violent incidents. First, in Brooklyn, New York, 2 trans women were minding their own business.
Leaving a store.
And were attacked by a gang of about 10 people. They were gay bashed, slashed, beaten. Both ended up at the hospital. We have a picture of them, I believe, if we can get there. They are. Yeah. Just minding their own business.
That's a Los Angeles-based DJ named Jasmine Infinity, who was 32, and a Florida-based rapper named London Jade, 22. They were shouting horrible things at them and slashed them and broke concussion, broken jaw, all these kinds. They could have killed them.
Yeah. And we continue to be concerned for the gay men in Chechnya who are being rounded up, tortured, killed by their local government there. And there was a march in New York and others around the country for the people in Chechnya who are being attacked.
So we marched through the village in Chelsea on a Sunday. But here's the message. And for everybody, contact your members of Congress. We need emergency visas for these Chechen gays or they're going to die. The second thing is put pressure on the oil companies, which all do big business in Russia, to put pressure on Putin. Yeah. Now, what's his name? Oliver Stone, raised at least the gay issue with Putin in his interviews, but not very strongly.
Well, and Putin just denies there's any problem. Oh, we're not homophobic. We're not nasty to people, and it's all a big lie.
Would you shower with them in the military? He was asked, and he said, and he goes, I don't want to provoke them. Vladimir, you Vladimir yourself.
Yeah.
All right. We've been telling you about the case of that guy in Rutherfordton, North Carolina, who was assaulted by his congregation. And there's been a mistrial in the case, if you saw.
Yes.
Because one of the jurors did something untoward and has now been locked up.
Yeah, they weren't explicit about what the juror did.
Distributed some information to the other jurors they weren't supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. New Pew survey out says more people are out as LGBT. Now about 10 million people in the U.S., about 4% of the population. That's people who are out. That doesn't count the people who are closeted or not talking about it. So I'm sure the number is much higher, but the out number keeps going up, especially among young people, 7.3% of whom are out. And people of color, women, poorer people are all more likely to be out. And
well, you've said this for years,
yeah.
That coming out is about giving up privilege to some extent. And if you don't have
assuming minority status.
Right.
And those with privilege, if you look at this list, you would have to reduce that to gay white men are less likely to be out because they are afraid of giving up that privilege.
Come on, guys. Let's get with it.
Although, strangely, we see them more often as the representations
more
of
about
gay.
this when we talk about Kevin Spacey.
But the survey also finds that acceptance is up in general, in spite of what I said earlier.
Maybe
in the
it
show.
will help that the American Medical Association finally officially adopted a policy against discrimination against transgender people in serving them.
Oh, the AMA's been pretty good on our issues for a while.
And then there's Cardinal Joseph Tobin in Newark. Now, the huge spread in the Times, he said mass for them and he didn't call them names. I mean, and some of the gay people who went to this thing were like crying, and I'm not sure, but they were very, this was like, they thought a miracle had taken place. Well, as my old boss Bill Lynch used to say, well, that's better than a hard stick in the eye,
Well, it was a front page story in the Times this week, and then at least one full page inside. And I started reading it with this attitude of, well, fine, but none of the policies of the church have changed. Right. They're not accepting people as gay. They're not celebrating same-sex relationships.
Now, Cardinal Tobin did get criticized by the right wing in the church for even going this far.
Exactly.
And he was asked by the press, well, why didn't you talk about church policy around gay stuff? And he said, we were just here to get together, and I don't want to do that. This was a welcoming thing.
Well,
But what we're looking for is, please stop firing out gay people, who work for your institutions, your schools, and your hospitals,
that'd be a nice
things
start.
like that.
Yeah.
Stop that. And you've got to affirm the ministry of women. You've got to affirm, until a lesbian can be pope, we don't have anything to talk about. Now, I wrote.
I'm happy with that standard.
In my Times comment, I wrote, if you condemn gay love, you're worshiping a false god. So somebody answers me on the Times with the Bible, Leviticus. It is an abomination; they shall be put to death. These are the words of God. This guy said. I said, well, I'm glad, sir, that you've acknowledged that this is what the Bible says. But I advise you, in a pluralistic society, not to act on it, because you will be put in prison for the rest of your life unless they decide to electrocute you. All right.
You lost me somewhere in the middle there. But
right.
the point is that do we want to be welcomed? Sure. But do we want to be respected and celebrated even more?
And there are so many churches, if you're a Christian or Jew, whatever, that, well, congregations that are more than welcoming. They're totally affirming.
Yes.
They'll do your marriage.
Yes.
Etc. They'll say, you're good. Your love is good.
Well, people are addicted to their upbringing.
I managed to leave in 1982 from that outfit.
Andy can be your new leader.
Okay.
All right. Can we move on to international
Please.
News?
Well, let's start with the United Kingdom elections.
So much happening there.
Yeah. I mean, it was a huge setback for the Conservatives. The Prime Minister called an election and expected to get a grand majority against that Jeremy Corbyn, which a lot of Labour members of Parliament were rooting for because they wanted to get rid of him, and he did very well. He didn't win, but she lost her majority. So who does she...
but in the end we lose because who does she ally with to make a majority? The most right-wing group around, the Northern Ireland, what are they?
It's the Democratic Unionist Party. Ian Paisley's party. He's an anti-Catholic bigot, for God's sake.
Well, he's dead, I think.
Yes, but he was the leader of the party.
Yes. But they're still homophobic, right-wing, blocked same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland.
So the Scottish Conservative Party, which is part of Theresa May's majority, they made inroads in Scotland. It's led by an open lesbian who's married. And she said, I've gotten assurances that we're not going to retreat on LGBT issues. 45 people elected in this election were out gay or lesbian or bisexual. That's 7% of the parliament and a 40% increase over the last parliament.
36 men, 9 women, no trans people, but
we're getting
progress. The Northern Ireland right-wing party that she's allied with had a slogan in the 80s, "Save Ulster from sodomy."
Oh my God.
I don't
well,
think
they're the ones who block same-sex marriage there.
Yes.
They're a minority party up there, but they block same-sex marriage. Now, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, was confirmed, elected by the whole parliament as the new prime minister, the Taoiseach. But he's pretty conservative. But he's out gay.
He
and
is
he's
in
the
favor of same-sex marriage.
Well, and his coming out in 2015 helped put that over the top by 60%. But he's also the youngest prime minister since Michael Collins, who was the first one.
Pride marches around the world. We showed you Guam. In Bucharest, Romania, 1,000 people showed up for a Pride march, including the U.S. ambassador. The legislature, meanwhile, is trying to codify man-woman-only marriage. But the Pride March had a moment of silence to remember what's going on in Chechnya. There was a small counter-protest, but nothing big. And in Bulgaria, at Sofia Pride, thousands of people showed up. There had been big threats of violence there. So there was tons of security and only 50 counter-demonstrators.
Germany, which is led by a conservative government under Angela Merkel, is granting visas to gay Chechens escaping violence now.
Yes. And in Malaysia, remember the fun story last week of how the Malaysian Health Ministry was running a video contest, including make a video for us of how to prevent homosexuality. And that story just zipped around the world. Well, because it zipped around the world, they have canceled the call for the prevent homosexuality videos. That's a big win. 200,000 at Pride in Tel Aviv, Israel.
In Panama, 145 lawyers appeared before the Supreme Court to oppose marriage equality.
145 lawyers. And in Geneva, the LGBT rights expert who works for the UN, the guy whose sexual orientation I've been trying to figure out and I can't find any information. If you know, tell us. He put out a report to the Human Rights Council that talked about continuing violence, abuse, and discrimination against LGBT people around the world. confirmed that 70 countries still criminalize sexual relations between men, and 40 criminalize sexual relations between women, and that he thinks that we need to teach respect early. We got to start, in grade school or earlier, teaching people to respect LGBT people and everyone.
Okay.
All right, AIDS news.
Well, the World Health Organization has declared PrEP an essential medicine. That's a big step forward.
Yeah.
And
the FDA has approved generic Truvada for PrEP and for treatment, but it's not going to be available for quite a while. But theoretically, they have approved that, and it's an expensive drug, so that's important.
And, Congress ruled that marijuana sales for medical marijuana were not going to be interfered with by the federal government. And Jeff Sessions is appealing to them to let him crack down on this. And that it is just a nightmare.
Well, look, this is
Even
what the
Republicans are speaking out and saying, wait a minute. Because it's a very popular issue, medical marijuana.
The Trump, and a very big business.
Yes.
The Trump administration is just going step by step by step to cancel anything progressive that has happened in the last 8 years. They are on a march to...
Try the last 80 years.
Well, that too. But specifically the last 8 years. This weekend, on Sunday, the 18th, all day, 10:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., ACT UP will be noting its 30th anniversary by holding a Hidden Histories Conference. This is meant to train new activists on the secrets of their success, new strategies, and bringing to bear a wider history than has been written about or made into films. So that's going to be at the LGBT Community Center here in New York on Sunday from 10:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., the Hidden Histories Conference. And I went to the Museum of the City of New York and saw their exhibit, AIDS, Art, and Activism Today, and it's really, really good. I went for a panel discussion connected to it, but I went through the exhibit beforehand, and I enjoyed it more than I expected to. Very moving, very rich and deep, and I highly recommend it. Museum of the City of New York at 103rd and 5th Avenue, AIDS, Art, and Activism Today.
And I went to the Queens Museum, where they're celebrating 25 years of Pride, mostly the archives of Councilmember Danny Drum, but right there in the museum, and they had a grand affair with First Lady Shirlane McCrae hosting.
Entertainment news?
Yes, well...
before we get to the Tonys.
Okay.
Because we want to talk about the Tonys.
Sure.
But I just feel a need to tell you.
Please.
The worst movie of the year that I saw this weekend, and I resent it, Wonder Woman.
Why?
Horrible.
Why?
Horrible script, horrible acting.
It's a big movie, though, isn't it?
Oh.
A lot of people are seeing it. I don't go to those kind of things.
And it turns out, female empowerment. All she's doing is hanging out with men for 2.5 hours. It's awful.
It's like Margaret Thatcher. She didn't have any women in her cabinet.
I wanted to walk out after 20 minutes. The only reason I didn't was because I thought I am required to see what happens in this movie.
You always walk out on me. You walked out on
you're still there.
You walked out on the best play of the year, Oslo.
Yes, I did. I found it a little tedious.
But you got me to see
the real best play of the year.
Doll's House Part 2, which is terrific. It didn't win, but it's terrific. But Laurie Metcalf won, and that was gratifying.
Save yourself a few bucks. Do not go see Wonder Woman. You may want to instead see the documentary, which I haven't seen, but which our friend Rex Walkner is so enthusiastic about, No Dress Code Required, the story of the Mexican couple who fought for same-sex marriage, no dress code required. And you also might want to watch online the BuzzFeed series, Queer Prom, 5 parts online on YouTube, BuzzFeed. Now,
there's so much gay. Well, the Tonys, I've always watched the Tonys. The Tonys made my blood boil this year with Kevin Spacey as host. He is a closet case, all right. He didn't, but not only did he, there he is dressed as Norma Desmond, he made no less than 4 jokes about the closet. One about Whoopi Goldberg coming out of the closet, one about kissing Chris Cooper and then doing American Beauty, one about drooling over Orlando Bloom, and this Norma Desmond thing, which was an I'm Coming Out song. And everybody, ha, 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 ha. But he's a closet case. He's never owned up to who he is. He doesn't act like a responsible adult. It just makes me angry. I, you know, most of my friends on Facebook agreed with me. Some did not.
Well,
some said, "Is he gay?"
Oh my
and
God.
I said, "One of my ex-husbands slept with him." How's that? Before he was famous.
And he was on the cover of the National Enquirer for years with boys, taking them up into the mountains
but the thing
of LA.
is, but this is the theater, and also he's just about to play Clarence Darrow at the tennis stadium, big show. And he does all these liberal things. He hangs out in these communities and all this kind of stuff.
And your point is?
And he doesn't get the message. That's the point. He doesn't understand it. So
look, I agree with you about all of that. I also thought the whole long opening act he did was tedious and stupid and not funny. And the whole thing about the closet, you know, I didn't like that whole exchange between him and Whoopi. He says, Whoopi walks out of the closet, and he says, Whoopi, how long have you been in that closet? And she says, well, Kevin, it depends on who you ask.
What does
now,
that mean?
first of all, she has a bisexual history, which
that she has acknowledged in the past.
Not lately.
Not lately.
And he didn't say, oh, really? And she didn't. Here's what she should have said. She should have said, how long have I been in the closet?
But
that would have been the line.
But it came up on The View. Now, Whoopi shows this clip.
Yeah.
And then Joy Behar says, well, Kevin Spacey was talking about the closet, about making 3 or 4 jokes about it, like that. Silence from Whoopi.
No,
and then they
she
moved
says,
on.
no, that was about me, not about him.
Well, they moved on. They did not deal with...
No, they did not. Now, meanwhile, they have a performance by the Falsettos cast where there is kissing between 2 women and 2 men.
And before I forget, you can go to falsettoscinema.com and find out when you can see it in cinemas near you, or you can wait till October. It's going to be on PBS.
Then you have Cynthia Nixon, who talks about her God-sent wife as she wins the Tony for Best Supporting Actress.
And she also said, she made a wonderful speech. She said
really
there are
did.
people who eat the earth and eat all the people on it, and other people who just stand around and watch them do it. And she said, my love, my gratitude, my undying respect go out to all the people in 2017 who are refusing to just stand and watch them do it. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
And I don't think Cynthia got enough acknowledgement of that in what I read. You said you read references to it. I read a lot more references to Stephen Colbert and not references to her. I thought she made a fantastic speech.
Gavin Creel won for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for Hello, Dolly, and he also acknowledged his partner, husband.
As did the producer of Hello, Dolly, Scott Rudin.
There's Scott Rudin in the midst of all the Hello Dolly people, and his last thank you was to his husband.
I would like to see Bette Midler host the awards next year. I would like to hear more from her. I also thought the number from Bandstand was just spectacular.
I loved Bandstand. It won for Best Choreography.
And I like the Rockettes number.
And Ben Platt, who won for Best Actor in a Musical for Dear Evan Hansen. He's not gay that I know of, and he said, the things that make you strange are the things that make you powerful.
And the shocking winner for Best Director of a Play, Rebecca Teichman, for Indecent, the big Paula Vogel lesbian play.
Which is closing on June 25th.
So Kevin Spacey, get with the program.
Yeah.
And we will get with this program again next week. Bye.
Thanks for watching.